Alright, today we're going to show you how to frame up a GD3. I've already pre-assembled the sides to make the video shorter. I've got the panduit for the limit switch and the left-hand Z motor. I've got the lower bearing block installed. I've got T-nuts with the M5x8 for my Z uprights and for the ends. I've got the panduit installed in the back for the wiring, along with the corner brackets. Everything's loosely assembled so I can move it around. And got the panduit on this side over here for the right hand Z motor, the power switch wires, the upper Z limit switch, and that's about it. So we'll just start sliding it together. Of course, I'm cheating, I've got a frame to do it on, but hopefully you're doing it on a flat surface as well, like a table. So what you want to do is have your quarter brackets loosely assembled so that slide back and forth.
I'm going to dial in on the landline.
So what you want to do is just get one side started. Come over here to the other side. And then kind of hold the corner bracket in there. And I'm going to just barely snug this down because we use framing clamps on these. Okay, and so now I will start the M5x12 in the two holes into the cross rails, and I'll do that on all four corners, but I won't tighten them up yet. M5x12.
Hello?
Again, I'm just starting them into the hole. I'm not really
error that we were seeing.
tightening them up. I'll do that after I get it squared up to my satisfaction.
Okay, we'll proceed then. So there's a version of Yep, so if you double click on double click on that and open that up. Inside there's a Gigabot folder, open that up. Inside there's Marlin, open that. And then go to configuration.
Okay, now I'm going to get my framing clamps, and there's two things we're trying to do here.
So we scroll up
We're trying to get,
Yep, perfect.
get in here,
And
we're trying to get this surface to this surface as flush as possible, and to make sure that there's no gap between the side plate and the cross rail. So I want to eliminate that, make sure there's no gap across here, and make sure we're level here and here. Okay, so I'm using these framing clamps, and you don't really want it too tight. All you're just trying to do is pull together the gap. I mean, so you just enough to get the gap out. I mean, you don't want it really tight. In fact, I can still move it a little bit. In fact, you want it tilted up a little bit so you can reach your bolts.
And then the first thing I'd like to do is just to make sure.
Since I'm already on this
perfect. So disconnect from Gigabot
frame, it's going to be pretty easy to get this thing together.
Compiled,
Use
so
the
that's good.
M5
So
by
we're
12
done
to take
compiling,
up
there's
whatever
no
gap I've
errors.
got.
So let's go ahead and up to the tools menu on
pull
top.
it up.
And we'll make sure that our serial port
Gently
is
until the gap's
okay. So
gone.
it's either going to be COM 1 or 6.
I'm feeling for a
probably 6,
space
I'm
right
guessing.
there, so I'll just take the
Okay,
square and put it on
perfect.
both surfaces.
Okay. And then
Give it a
also
little
under that
tap.
tools menu, I just want to make sure that
It's perfectly
just to
flush
double check
now.
the board, and it should be
So
the
now I
AT
will,
2560 perfect.
Tighten
Good.
these up.
So let's go ahead and upload that firmware.
You can see how I've got a gap in between the side plate, and so I'm going to use these M5x12s to kind of pull it together. Okay, that's pretty good. And so I'm going to feel right there, and this one's already pretty close, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a little tap with the square on both surfaces. And you're just trying to get it as close as you can, within a couple of thousandths of what we like here at RE3D.
Cool. Nice. So how we did.
And because the pan duits are in the way, it's easier to tighten up the corner brackets from the bottom. So I slide it off the frame, and I can reach in here and tighten these corner brackets up.
Pin number 47, which I can. As long as the switch.
And you notice I'm not using a square on the outside, and that's because the corner brackets are already 90 degrees, and it pretty much pulls itself together. So this side's done, and I'm going to go ahead and go to the other side. Alright, that's it. So there's no gaps in between the side plates. We're flush on the side rails and the cross rails. Looks pretty good. Line the T-nuts up. I will just bottom these M5x8s just so they don't fall apart while I put the rest of the bot together. They're not tight. So a little trick is to use the Allen wrench to line these T-nuts up. It doesn't always work, but it at least gets it close. Now I'm going to do the fronts. But in order for the rail to slide in easily, you need to be able to see at least one thread in the T-nut. I mean, if you have the screw flush, the rail's not going to slide in, so you want to see about one thread. And then the front rail, I like to make sure I'm holding it down square to the cross rail, and I just finger tighten these right here and kind of feel with my thumb and try to make sure I'm just taking all the slack out of the T-nuts so they don't fall apart. I like to feel that I'm flush right there and that the rail's seated on the cross rail. I just finger tighten these. And on this side, I just take the slop out. I don't try to bend the side plate if it's bowed out a little bit, which is normal. Just like that. So now I'm going to put the top rails on. So here's the top rail with the side plate. The idler pulley's already installed. 3 washers underneath it with the convex side of the washer up against the bearing. And then you've got another washer with the convex side against the bearing and the lock nut. Flush up here, equally spaced on each end. Okay, and now I'm going to load the T-nuts in these 3 holes each here and these 2 on each end and slide them into these rails. Since we're going to put the backs in last, I usually screw these all the way in so they're not rattling around and fall out while I'm working these in. Alright, a couple of things to consider. The big hole delineates between the front and the rear, and notice how it's a mirror image top and bottom. And so one thing too is sometimes these are sharp edges. Be careful not to pinch your finger in here like I've done so many times while you're putting it together. So I usually like to start back here, get the first T-nut going. It's probably better if I can see something good. Let's just line up the first T-nut. Slide it in there. Go to the next one. Okay. If it looks awkward, that's because it is. Like I said, be careful you don't pinch your finger right there. And that's it. It's in. So now I'm going to do the other side the same way. So what we've got, idler pulley, bottom bearing block, panduits, because at this point right here is a good time to check and make sure you haven't left anything out, like the panduits or the bottom bearing blocks. I mean, after that it's too late. So what I want to do now is I want to load the panduit in this front leg for the on-off switch wiring and the Z upper limit switch. So I'll go ahead and put that panduit in now before I put this side rail on. So this is the 29-inch piece. You guys probably don't have this at home, but believe me, this is a lot easier than trying to put your T-nuts in there and then put it on. So I'm just going to slide it down in there. Right there. So again, make sure you can see at least one thread inside the T-nuts. If it doesn't want to slide well. Okay, that's it. Alright, so now I can put the front header on. Here's a header I've already built. You're flush here, you're flush on the ends, and I've already loaded my T-nuts for the legs. So when you're pre-assembling, that makes the bot go together a lot easier, and it's a lot less confusing if you'll just go ahead and break it up into sub-assemblies and then go to assemble, rather than just erector setting it in one piece at a time.
Going back to the heat, it's got a 2.0 vision. Yeah. So is it the firmware that determines what times are on? That makes sense. And obviously, when this file he has comes up, and it's obviously the bed temperature over on the E1.
The header and the footer are just a little bit different to put in.
It doesn't like that prerogative, let's say, because
So
all of a sudden this
eyeball.
that 70.
I push up against this right side here so I know I'm at least in the neighborhood. And then I'll start this one side. So one T-nut in,
The thing
go
is,
to the other side.
when I get it done, tested it out, I went
That
to
one.
before he touched
That
it.
one.
I went to his print, pulled the machine
That
up,
one.
brought
That
it
one.
up, hit it, identified the file, showed him how to scroll the zoom process,
That one.
started,
Okay.
all is happening.
And so I'll go ahead and put my M5x12 on each side here.
Even though he needs that print, I don't want to run
And these
that
two
print. I
holes
wanna
just like
run
on the
this
bottom.
one that I gotta run. And he processes and he calls me when I'm, 10, 15 minutes.
On the top, sometimes you've got to pull it together to get it
did,
to start.
and then I couldn't even get the print.
And then again, these are all just finger tight. I'm just running the bolt. And I'm not even tightening it. That'll come later.
I don't know about spaces, but
I didn't see the parentheses.
or pound signs or anything
That's
like
something
that.
we'll need to tell me.
So it's probably the problem. And that's why you pull it up on front of it, because you pull it up on front.
Well, it showed on the SD card. Like when I went to SD card to identify it, it showed up there. I didn't see any parentheses. It wouldn't come up in the bottom.
So right now I'm not worried about any kind of spacing or being flush here. I'm going to do that later. So now I want to install my pre-assembled bridge assembly. So here's a bridge assembly. It's all pre-assembled with the Y belts, the wheels with the eccentric. Make sure you've got grease in between the plate and the eccentric for ease of adjustment. I've got the idler pulley. Same before. You've got 3 washers with the concave side up on the bottom. Let me show you what I mean about the concave. These are stamped washers, and you can see how you've got a smooth side with radiused edges, and then you've got a flat side. If you put the flat side against the bearing, it'll chew the dust seal up. So you always want to put this surface against the bearing. So the large gap, see how it's the distance? The large distance goes towards the front to give you room for the extruder head. So make sure your belt's up underneath. Just engage. 2 wheels on one side.
So if you go to enterprise, when you go to enterprise, what I'm saying is, so when you go up here,
So now I can put this leg
I
in.
think you set that up from originally with DB2. And then when Derek and I were there, he had the DB2
And what I'll do is I'll just capture it with this first T-nut until I get the other one situated. We'll just tighten that up a little bit to hold it out of the way while I get the other ones where I want them. Okay. So normally it'll go this T-nut, this T-nut, this T-nut, that T-nut, that T-nut. So I'll loosen this back up and I will pay attention to this T-nut. Get it started, and then we'll do this one. And then we'll do this one. This bottom one. Okay, I've got that leg in. I want to make sure it's seated against the cross rail. It's kind of flush right there, so I'll just finger tighten these. Now I need to put my, and I'll snug these in, just finger tighten these, just so the T-nuts don't drop out. So now I want to put my Panduit for my right hand Y-axis motor, and on this side I'm going to show you how to install the Panduit, the main Panduit for the electronics in that leg without having to use magic T-nuts. You can kind of do them both simultaneously. Alright, so you're not wrestling with these, because you're going to be wrestling with the Panduit at the same time. I go ahead and get these ready right off the bat. Sometimes you can get lucky and line these up with the Allen wrench and they'll pretty much fall into place. Okay, so I'll get the T-nuts in the Panduit first. And the reason why I've got these moved inboard is to give me more room to get the leg started and get the Panduit started at the same time, rather than having them all the way out on the end. And it's actually easier to be able to tighten them up too, because you're not all the way down here trying to tighten it up. Loosen these up. I can see a thread. Now that I've got that point, I can start my Panduit. You're not going to be able to get to the last one yet, so I just go ahead and get it started on these T-nuts.
I brought the cable back. I don't know if you wanted
Getting the Panduit lined up. I'm hitting at the top, I think. Nope. Here we go. Okay. So, this one.
When I see
This one.
okay, your cable's here and your filament tube's there, right? When I see the filament tube pulled out, why would you do that? And he had to yank it out because it had a bulge on it.
Okay, there we go. So same thing, I'll pull down on this leg to make sure I'm flat against the cross rail. Finger tighten all these. There we go. So it's a lot easier if you'll just tighten the middle one up first, and that kind of holds it up out of the way. Alright, I'm ready to put my rear header up. One thing you'll notice is I've already got the T-nuts to hold the electrical box uprights in. These are M5 by 10s on each side. Same here. I've got the 2 T-nuts to hold the Panduit top panduit for the filament detectors. I've got the M5x10s and the T-nuts loaded for the top of the electrical box. I've also got to remember to put my, well, these right here, I've got my T-nuts for the both filament detectors. Even if your bot only is going to come with one, I always put in there. That way you can add a filament detector later and don't have to worry about adding T-nuts. And that's for the actual rod that holds the filament tube. So make sure you've got all those included. So nameplate goes on the left rear from the back. Here's the corner plate that's got the holes for the Y-axis cable tray. So here again, I'll just go ahead and loosen these T-nuts up, get them ready to start. It looks pretty good. Same as the other side. And if you're pushing down, you've got a T-nut too tight, and don't do it, because if that thing suddenly lets go and you smash your finger in between the two, it's not good. So there's that one. All right. And then I'll put my M5x12s in the end. Okay, so it's all together. So now what we're going to do at this point is we're going to square up the four legs on each corner, and then we're going to flush the top out, and then we'll go to aligning the Z rails.